Emma had always been fascinated by the digital realm. As a freelance journalist, she often explored the less savory corners of the internet to uncover the stories behind the shadows. One evening, while sifting through forums on the dark web, she stumbled upon a post that piqued her interest. It detailed unsettling urban legends about a mysterious figure known only as the Watcher, who was rumored to stalk those who frequented such sites, drawing their darkest fears from the pixels of their screens. At first, Emma dismissed it as another overblown cautionary tale, but as she delved deeper, she felt a chill run down her spine. The posts were unsettling, filled with testimonies of people who had vanished or been terrorized. So, she did what any curious journalist would do. She decided to dig deeper, documenting her findings for an article. Days turned into weeks as Emma immersed herself in research, yet with each clicking tap, she noticed something strange. Her online activity had started attracting unwelcome attention. Her social media accounts were inundated with spam messages, and peculiar new followers began appearing, often with vague usernames and cryptic bios, until her world turned upside down one fateful night. It began with a series of knocks on her door. Emma, home alone, felt her heart race. She cautiously peeked through the peephole, but there was no one there. Dismissing it as her imagination running wild, she returned to her laptop, convinced she needed to finish her article. But the feeling of being watched lingered. The next day, she received a direct message on a secure chat app, mysterious and menacing. "You should stop digging, Emma. The truth is darker than you think." Her blood ran cold. Who was this person? Had someone truly been watching her? "Run out with me, Emma." Determined to uncover the identity of her stalker, she began tracing her digital footprint. However, the deeper she probed, the more perilous her situation became. Mysterious emails flooded her inbox, filled with her personal information, a home address, recent photos, and details about her life that no one should have known. Panic set in as she realized that she was in over her head. One night, Emma was jolted awake by the sound of her phone vibrating incessantly. Bleary-eyed, she could see dozens of missed notifications from different platforms. Each message was a taunt. "You can't hide from me, Emma." Heart-pounding, she glanced out her bedroom window. There, illuminated by the dim glow of a streetlight, stood a figure, a tall silhouette, motionless, just out of reach of the shadows. Emma's instincts kicked in. She quickly grabbed her phone and dialed the police. As she described her predicament, the silhouette began moving, inching closer to her front door. Her voice trembled as she hung up, the operator assuring her help was on the way, while she locked the windows and doors. Moments stretched into an eternity as she waited, her breathing shallow, each creak of the house echoing louder than the last. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. It was a video message. She hesitated, then pressed play, her heart sinking as the screen displayed a live feed from a camera positioned right outside her home. "I can see you," the message echoed, sending sards of fiercely throwing light. Just then she heard the sound of glass shattering downstairs. Without thinking, she bolted for the back door, desperate to escape. But as Emma reached the threshold, she spotted it. A laptop lying open on her kitchen table, with an image of her on the screen. The realization struck her like a thunderclap. Her stalker had hacked into her home, into her life itself. In a surge of adrenaline, she sprinted into the night, her breath visible in the cold air. Every shadow felt alive. Every rustle felt like a whisper of impending doom. She dashed into a nearby alley, heart racing, as she fumbled for her phone to call for help again. Just as she dialed, a figure materialized behind her, and she froze. The watcher spoke in a low, haunting voice. "You've gone too far, Emma." But before the figure could advance, blaring sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder. The figure hesitated, glancing back towards where the sound approached. Seizing the opportunity, Emma broke into a full sprint, leaving only the shadow in her wake. She didn't stop until she reached the police station, pouring out her story to the officers who took immediate action. Months later, Emma sat at her desk, typing her story about the harrowing ordeal that nearly cost her everything. She had decided to turn her frightening experience into a cautionary tale, one that could educate others about the dangers lurking in the shadows of the digital world. As she typed, memories of fear and adrenaline flooded back, but there was also a sense of empowerment. She had faced her demons and emerged stronger. In the wake of the incident, Emma found herself drawn into the world of cybersecurity advocacy. Her article, now widely shared, resonated with readers and struck a nerve with many who had experienced similar threats. She began holding workshops, educating the public about online safety, how to protect personal information, and the importance of reporting suspicious activities immediately. But the lessons learned came at a cost. Though she had seemingly escaped her stalker, a lingering anxiety plagued her. Every time she heard a car door slam or saw a stranger linger too long in her neighborhood, her heart raced. The police had assured her the stalker was behind bars, but the psychological scars remained. One evening, during a workshop, Emma noticed a familiar username in the chat box of her virtual seminar. Watchful Eye. Her pulse quickened as she scanned the comments, trying to remain composed while a chill ran down her spine. The comments were innocuous enough. Questions about online privacy. But the name alone sent her spiraling back into her memories of fear. After the session ended, she decided to Google the username, her apprehension growing with every second. To her horror, multiple accounts on various forums used the same name, and they all linked back to discussions about hacking and surveillance techniques. It was clearly an alias, but it felt too close for comfort. What if her past was following her, like the shadow that had haunted her nights? Determined to get to the bottom of it, she reached out to some of her cybersecurity friends, explaining her concerns. They quickly ran a check and discovered that the username had popped up in several dark web environments, showcasing interest in stalking and surveillance methods. Fear bubbled in Emma's chest again. Had her stalker resurfaced, or was this a mere coincidence? That night, she locked all her doors and windows, eliminating any possibility of intruders. She installed new security cameras inside and out, ensuring she wouldn't be caught off guard again. But with every little creak in her house, she felt the weight of paranoia settle on her shoulders. This was the ploy. A smile spread across her face, glowing from the cameras, like a sheen on her husband's. As weeks passed, she noticed oddities in her daily life, flickering lights, an occasional misplaced object, and even the sensation of being watched when she was alone. It was enough to drive anyone to madness. Emma was a detective in her own life, piecing together clues where she hoped to find safety. One evening, while scrolling through her social media feed, she stumbled upon an urgent post from a friend. A local woman had gone missing, her last known location near a dark web convention. The poster warned others to stay vigilant, tagging users with suspicious behavior. Emma's heart raced. There were watchful eyes comments scattered throughout the thread, echoing confidence that taunted the community's unease. Compelled into action, Emma contacted the local authorities, providing them with her findings and her own unsettling experiences. While they initially viewed her as an overprotective citizen, her reputation had garnered some credibility, and soon they launched an investigation. Now, with her own experience blending into the hunt for this elusive stalker, whether it was her original tormentor or a copycat, Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose. Using all her knowledge and contacts, she poured herself into the investigation, determined to uncover the truth and prevent anyone else from falling victim to the dangers she once faced. In her quest, she connected with former victims and allies in the cybersecurity field, forging a network of support and shared wisdom. Together, they uncovered a growing trend of individuals finding solace on the dark web, only to become prey for those who thrived in the anonymity it provided. The investigation took unexpected turns, revealing an underground network that exploited vulnerabilities, feeding into the darkest impulses of many. Emma became a key figure in exposing this network, writing revealing articles that went viral, garnering public interest and leading to serious crackdowns. Then, one fateful night, Emma received a message almost identical to the one that haunted her long ago. "You think you've escaped me. The web has eyes everywhere, and you're still being watched." But this time, Emma was prepared. With her experience and resources, she traced the message to a compromised computer linked to a wider network of stalkers. Rallying her newfound allies and providing the authorities with the evidence she had painstakingly compiled, they launched a virtual sting operation, culminating in a raid that apprehended several individuals involved in the dark web ring. As she watched the news reports flash across the screen, the arrest of individuals tied to her stalker, the dismantling of a network she once feared, Emma felt a rush of triumph mixed with catharsis. She had turned her fear into a force for good, transforming her harrowing experience into a powerful movement that raised awareness about the dangers of the dark web. This is so great. Emma felt a rush of tide-a-whiz to make her feel already well. Months passed, and Emma found herself immersed in her new role as an advocate against online harassment and stalking. She traveled frequently to speak at conferences, sharing her story and drawing attention to the issue. Each speech ignited a fire within her, inspiring others to take control of their online safety and to speak out against abuse. Despite her newfound purpose, the shadow of her past lingered. Late at night, she often sat at her desk, staring at the blinking cursor on her screen, recalling the countless messages and threats that had once paralyzed her with fear. It was a reminder of how much she had fought to reclaim her life. A constant juxtaposition of triumph and vulnerability. Then, one particularly rainy evening, she received an unexpected phone call. It was Detective Ramirez, the officer who had initially responded to her case during her ordeal with the Watcher. "Emma, we've got something," he said, his voice grave. "We're digging into some data from the network we shut down, and we've uncovered names that connect to your case." Emma's heart raced as she listened. The news hit Emma hard. Despite everything she had done, Despite the arrests and the safety measures she had put in place, the impending threat was real. As she hung up the phone, she felt the weight of dread settle into her bones. She couldn't go back to living in fear. She had to keep moving forward. But this time, she would be ready. Emma secured her home with even more surveillance, doubling down on her measures to track any suspicious activity. She enlisted the help of her cybersecurity friends, who recommended advanced security software to monitor her digital footprint. Together, they developed a plan. If someone was indeed stalking her, they would catch them in the act. Weeks rolled by, filled with a mix of mounting anxiety and relentless determination. Every night, Emma would analyze footage from her cameras, looking for any signs of intrusion. She also began training in self-defense, empowered by the notion that she was not simply a victim, but a fighter. One evening, while going through her footage, her heart skipped a beat. In the corner of the frame, just across the street, she noticed a figure lingering, their outline distorted by the dim streetlight. She felt an icy grip on her heart as she recognized the posture. Familiar, yet menacing. With the adrenaline pumping through her veins, she quickly dialed Detective Ramirez, explaining what she had seen. He assured her that he would send a patrol car to her neighborhood immediately. As Emma waited, the figure shifted back into the shadows, and she found herself torn between fear and curiosity. Who were they? Why were they watching? When the police arrived, they did a thorough sweep of the area, but found no trace of the mysterious figure. The detective counseled her on how to remain vigilant, reinforcing the importance of keeping her security tight. As they spoke, Emma noticed a flicker of movement across the street. She turned and pressed her forehead against the window, squinting into the darkness. Suddenly, an email notification popped up on her laptop screen. "I see you." Emma's stomach dropped as she tore her gaze from the window to the screen. Another message from the same user, watchful eye. Fear surged through her, but so did a fierce resolve. This time, she knew she wouldn't be passive. She gathered her courage, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Working with the police, they decided to craft a response. Bait for the watcher. They set up a fake online account, carefully curated to attract the stalker's attention, sparking a conversation that could potentially reveal their identity. September 4th, 1991. Days turned into weeks, with Emma on edge, but she refused to give in to fear. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the plan bore fruit. The stalker, who turned out to be someone she had brushed with in her previous investigations, let slip a crucial detail in their messages that revealed their location. "We have a lead!" Detective Ramirez exclaimed when he contacted her that evening. They planned a sting operation, utilizing the information Emma had gathered. It was a risk, but Emma's resolve was unbreakable. She felt that after everything she had endured, she owed it to herself and to any future victims to see this through. On the day of the operation, nerves churned in Emma's stomach as she watched from a distance, the police lying in wait. The plan was set in motion, and the tension hung in the air. They had traced the stalker to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, an eerie relic of forgotten industry, shadowed under the gray skyline. Emma could hardly breathe as she watched the officers communicate quietly, preparing themselves for what lay ahead. Time seemed to stretch as the sun set, casting long shadows across the ground. Then, a flicker of movement caught Emma's eye. A figure appeared, slipping out of the darkness, their hood pulled low over their face. Heart pounding in her chest, she gripped the edge of her seat, testing her resolve as she followed it with her gaze. This was the moment. The figure stepped into the dim light of the warehouse entrance, revealing a familiar silhouette that sent shockwaves through her nerves. It was someone she had encountered during her investigations, an individual who had participated in multiple dark web forums, often blurring the lines between the truth and deception. As the police moved in, Emma could hardly contain her anticipation. She felt the weight of her experience bearing down on her as the mystery came to light. This was the person who had waged psychological warfare against her, the one who had haunted her digital existence. The realization solidified her focus. This was not just about her anymore. It was about standing against anyone who sought to exploit and terrorize. Anybody. Within moments, the police apprehended the figure. "We got him," one of the officers shouted. Emma watched as they handcuffed the individual, dragging them into the light. The figure struggled, attempting to mask their identity. But the surveillance footage from Emma's cameras helped ensure there was no ambiguity about who they were. "You think I'm the end? You think you're safe?" The stalkers sneered as they were led away, their voice dripping with disdain. Yet Emma stood tall, feeling a sense of closure wash over her. A wave of relief mingled with the adrenaline still coursing through her. She knew that even though this chapter was coming to an end, the fight wouldn't truly be over. It would continue on a broader scale as she worked to bring awareness to the larger issues of online harassment. As the operations team briefed her on the next steps, Detective Ramirez approached Emma, a sense of admiration in his eyes. "You've shown incredible strength," he said, "but this is just the beginning for you. There's a lot we need to change." Emery nodded, feeling the pull of a path just starting to unfold before her. "I want to help. This isn't just about my story. I want to ensure no one else has to go through this again." "Melly, keep talking." In the months that followed, Emma poured every ounce of her being into advocacy. She worked alongside law enforcement, creating initiatives aimed at educating people about online safety and building support networks for victims of cyberstalking. Her workshops grew bigger, her speeches more compelling, and her reach stretched far beyond where it had begun. With each story she collected from survivors, each voice amplified in the digital space, Emma felt herself becoming stronger. The fear that had once shackled her was evolving into a passion, a hunger for justice that ignited a fire in her heart. But it wasn't just a fight against the shadows, it was a fight for empowerment. Emma began writing a book, documenting her journey from fear to strength, hoping her voice could inspire others to reclaim theirs. She shared stories of resilience, illustrating the power found in community, support, and education. Then, one afternoon, as she was finishing a particularly poignant chapter, Emma received a message that stopped her in her tracks. "I admire what you're doing, but you've only scratched the surface. There's so much more you don't know." Her heart raced as she recognized the style, an anonymous tip, possibly from someone connected to the dark web community, aimed to unsettle her. But this time, instead of fear creeping in, it sparked curiosity. She glanced out the window, contemplating her next step. Emma had faced the abyss and returned transformed. The darkness couldn't intimidate her anymore. She was resolute, educated, and vigilant. She simply had to dig deeper, remain aware, and continue to fight for the cause she had made her own. Emboldened by the uncertain yet thrilling revelation, Emma began planning her next investigation, delving back into the corners of the digital world she had momentarily stepped away from. She rattled through threads and forums, seeking whispers of the undercurrents that sought anonymity and preyed on the unsuspecting. Each new lead became a stepping stone. She was determined to understand the systemic issues behind the dangers she had faced, ready to expose them and create tangible change. As she moved forward, Emma realized it was no longer just about her past or her stalker. It was about redefining the future, advocating for safety, and pushing back against the shadows that lingered in the corners of society. The web may contain darkness, but with every story shared, every truth unveiled, she could unravel it bit by bit, bringing light to its hidden corners and empowering others alongside her. The web may contain darkness, but with every story, she entered. With this newfound purpose as her guide, Emma plunged into her work with a renewed vigor. She spent countless hours researching not just the technologies that facilitated online harassment, but also the psychological profiles of perpetrators and victims. Understanding the why behind such behaviors was crucial for empowering others and creating lasting change. As her advocacy gained traction, Emma formed alliances with tech developers, mental health professionals, and law enforcement officials. Together, they designed comprehensive programs that addressed the multifaceted nature of cyberbullying and stalking. They developed apps that provided real-time alerts for users about online threats, and workshops that trained law enforcement on how to better handle digital harassment cases. Emma also connected with platforms like social media sites and forums, where anonymity was often abused. She advocated for tighter regulations and better reporting mechanisms, holding companies accountable for facilitating environments where harassment could thrive. This is living. During this whirlwind of activity, she never forgot the initial spark of fear that had driven her to this point. Emma created a support group for victims, offering a safe space for them to share their stories, empowering them to reclaim their narratives and stand together against their tormentors. One evening, while facilitating a session, a member shared her experience of isolation and trauma after being stalked online. "I thought I was alone until I found this group," she said, her voice shaking. "Now I know I'm not." Those words ignited a sense of purpose within Emma. She realized how vital it was for survivors to see that they were not just victims, but part of a larger movement. They were fighters, each deserving of respect, recognition, and justice. At the height of these efforts, Emma was invited to speak at a national conference on digital safety, where she would have the opportunity to address law enforcement, legal experts, and tech companies. It was a pivotal moment, one she had been preparing for all her life. As she stood on the stage, the weight of her experiences infused her words with authority. "We must unite against the dark forces at play in our digital lives and empower each other to reclaim our voices," she shared passionately. "This is not just about personal safety. This is about fostering a culture that refuses to tolerate harassment in any form." The crowd erupted into applause, and the momentum of her speech resonated deeply with many in the audience. Afterward, she was approached by several key figures who expressed interest in collaborating on initiatives to improve safety online. However, amid the thrill of new partnerships and initiatives, the message that had unsettled her weeks prior still echoed in her mind. "You've only scratched the surface." Determined to dig deeper, Emma continued to sift through discussions and threads in dark web forums, fueled by both dread and curiosity. In her exploration, she stumbled across a hidden forum dedicated to stalking techniques and sharing personal strategies for avoiding detection. A place where those emboldened by anonymity gathered to exchange twisted tales. The realization sent a chill down her spine. But she felt compelled to observe the patterns and dynamics at play. There, amidst threads of bravado and vulnerability, Emma recognized her old nemesis's style. A similar language and almost poetic flair in the way they conveyed their tales of deceit. It was haunting, but also revealing. It hinted at how offenders cultivated their identities in these spaces, and how they thrived on the fear they instigated in their victims. As she delved further into the forum, Emma decided to create a shield around herself, employing various cybersecurity tactics. She anonymously enhanced her digital footprint in order to gather intel while remaining undetected. She knew that knowledge was power, and this time, she would not let fear dictate her actions. Weeks passed, and the information she gathered began to form a clearer picture of the perpetrator landscape online. There were different types of stalkers, each with distinct motives and tactics. Some thrived on power, while others were driven by obsession. Each new piece of information fueled her desire to inform more people about their behaviors and promote awareness. Using this newfound knowledge, Emma organized an online seminar aimed at educating the public on how to recognize the signs of stalking behaviors and the avenues available for reporting them. The seminar attracted an audience well beyond her expectations, garnering media attention and support from influencers in the justice and technology fields. As Emma stood before this expansive audience, she felt a rush of confidence. The fear that had once paralyzed her was no longer a backdrop. It had transformed into pure motivation. She encouraged participants to share their stories and welcomed experts who could provide insight into coping strategies. The evening morphed into a community event unlike any other, knitting together individuals from various walks of life, all united by a common cause. Emma's efforts began to ripple through communities, prompting legislative proposals aimed at increasing protections for victims of online harassment. Her once lonely crusade had evolved into a powerful movement. She felt a sense of triumph, knowing that every story shared and every person educated brought them closer to reshaping the dark narrative that so often overshadowed their lives. Yet, in the midst of progress, she remained cautious. Every so often, Emma would revisit her surveillance systems, maintaining her awareness of the threats lurking in the shadows. The persistent text from "Watchful Eye" remained engraved in her memory, a constant reminder that the darkness could resurface at any moment. But instead of letting that thought paralyze her, she redirected her fear into a vigilance that fortified her resolve. As the months rolled on, Emma's movement gained momentum. She found herself collaborating with lawmakers to draft new legislation aimed at enhancing penalties for online harassment and improving support systems for victims. Each meeting with politicians and stakeholders was another step toward creating meaningful change, but the deeper she delved into this world, the more she saw the cracks in the system. There was much work still to be done. One day, while working with a team of legal experts, Emma received news that sent shockwaves through her organization. A new group sprang up on the dark web, claiming to be the Watchers, a self-proclaimed network of vigilantes who targeted both victims and perpetrators. While the line between justice and vengeance was a thin one, their actions concerned Emma. Were they instilling hope or merely spreading more fear? She spent the next few nights poring over posts from this group, documenting everything she could find. It became evident that they were targeting individuals who they believed had wronged others online, often sharing their personal information publicly. Emma felt torn. On one hand, she understood the impulse to take matters into one's own hands, especially for those who had suffered profoundly. Yet on the other hand, she knew that harassing victims or targeting alleged offenders could perpetuate the cycle of violence and fear. Realizing the potential dangers these watchers posed, Emma discerned that she had to act. She hosted a roundtable discussion with cybersecurity experts, legal authorities, and fellow advocates. They discussed not only the legal implications of such actions, but also the psychological toll on victims who might find themselves exposed to public shaming by this group. The last thing we want is vigilante justice to spiral out of control, Emma emphasized during the meeting. We have to advocate for a regulated response, educating those who are seeking justice on the importance of working through formal channels. Otherwise, we risk becoming what we fight against. The group agreed, and together they devised a strategy to raise awareness about the real risks posed by vigilante groups. They launched an educational campaign entitled "Justice Must Be Just," aimed at outlining the difference between seeking justice through lawful means versus engaging in harassment or threatening behaviors. The campaign quickly gained traction, fueled by Emma's advocacy and her growing reputation as a knowledgeable leader in the field. It resonated with a public eager for meaningful change rather than chaos, and it sparked discussions on social media platforms, garnering attention from various media outlets. However, the emergence of the Watchers only heightened Emma's paranoia. Discussions centered around the group became wild and frenzied, with some individuals even calling for contributions to bring justice by tracking down offenders. An uneasy feeling settled in her stomach. She realized that attention had a way of attracting adversaries. Despite her best efforts to divert the confrontational nature of the movement, she began noticing strange behaviors online. Disturbing comments from unidentified accounts began flooding her social media profiles, filled with threats, cloaked in anonymity. The same patterns she had seen before re-emerged. Her personal information was being circulated in certain underground forums, and whispers of discontent sharpened into real. It was almost poetic. The very fear that had once embroiled her in despair now felt like a tangible force of resistance. Emma recognized that as she chastised vigilante justice, others had begun to see her as a target for their wrath. That night, she fortified her digital defenses once again, enhancing her cybersecurity measures and ensuring her physical safety was paramount. She activated all her camera alerts, scrutinized her surroundings, and shared her concerns with her closest allies. In the light of these developments, Emma's determination morphed into a strategic urgency. She couldn't let the dark web dictate her narrative or pit victim against victim. After consulting with her network, Emma called an emergency meeting, bringing together her trusted allies and digital safety experts. The meeting's mood was charged, reflecting the stakes now raised higher than ever. "We need to organize," she said passionately. "We can't let this become a battleground. We must demonstrate the power of solidarity and build a support bridge for victims seeking justice. We need to ensure that those wronged can find healing in our community, not division." As hesitant nods of approval cascaded around the conference room, Emma and her team began outlining a concerted effort to unite voices. They planned a nationwide event, the Day of Solidarity, aimed at bringing victims, advocates, law enforcement, and technology leaders together to advocate for comprehensive reforms and safety measures. The day arrived, and with it a palpable sense of hope and unity among the attendees. It was a gray day, threatened by rain, but inside the massive conference hall, the atmosphere brimmed with energy and resolve. Emma stepped onto the stage, her heart racing, but this time it wasn't fear that propelled her. It was the collective strength of those gathered. With a diverse group of speakers lined up, Emma opened the event with a powerful reminder of why they had come together. We're here not just to share our stories, but to ensure that every voice is heard, that every experience matters. Together, we can foster a community of safety, compassion, and empowerment. Let's stand together against those who would hide in the shadows. As the day unfolded, speakers ranging from law enforcement officials to tech innovators took the stage, discussing crucial topics like online safety, mental health support, and legal protections for victims. Emma watched, inspired by the resilience of the survivors who bravely shared their journeys, and the palpable sense of camaraderie that filled the room. During a panel discussion, Emma spoke passionately about the importance of approaching online harassment and stalking through a lens of prevention rather than punitive action. Education is key, she urged. When we equip our communities with knowledge and resources, we dismantle the power of those who believe they can manipulate and intimidate others. We foster a culture where we protect one another. The day culminated in a walk outside, where participants carried banners emblazoned with messages of hope and justice. The sheer number of people, victims, advocates, families, and friends, marching together was a powerful visual statement, and it echoed through the streets as they chanted slogans demanding change and solidarity. As the sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the crowd, Emma felt a swell of pride. They had unified their voices, transforming their pain into purpose. This was not just a single event. It was the beginning of a movement. However, even as they celebrated that momentous occasion, Emma remained acutely aware of her digital surroundings. As the months passed after the Day of Solidarity, she continued to receive sporadic threats and unsettling messages. The dark web community seemed relentless, yet her focus was unwavering. One night, while reviewing information for her upcoming book, a sudden ping from her phone jolted her focus. It was a message from an unknown number. "You're still under my watch. Stop interfering with my world." The silent sleeper held the hand of the Lord. The man, whose name was Drake, answered and said, "How might they do that?" "You're still under my watch. Stop interfering with my world." The cold grip of fear momentarily rushed back. But Emma had spent so long preparing for this. Instead of succumbing to panic, she reported the message to the police and activated her security protocols. They assured her they would investigate further, but she also knew that she wouldn't allow this to intimidate her into silence. Mounts is... The very next day, Emma sent out a definitive message on her social media platforms. To everyone in the dark web, lurking in the shadows, know this: you will not intimidate me. You will not silence our community. You have no power here. In the following weeks, armed with the support of her community and the momentum of her advocacy efforts, Emma pushed through the challenges, undeterred. Together, they lobbied for legislative changes that would protect not just individuals, but entire communities, redefining how society viewed online harassment. Then, one unexpected afternoon, she received another call from Detective Ramirez. "We've got a breakthrough," he said, his voice steady. Emma's heart raced. This could be the turning point they had been hoping for. "We've tracked a series of threats linked back to a known group of individuals operating under the Watchers. Intrigued, Emma felt a mix of apprehension and hope. They had managed to tie threats to several accounts scattered across the dark web, including some directly tied to her original stalker. It felt like pieces of an intricate puzzle were finally aligning. An opportunity to confront the insidious presence once and for all. Weeks passed as the police worked diligently to gather evidence. Emma watched from the sidelines, her resolve undeterred, and her community brought together by the shared mission of dismantling the fear that had crept into their lives. Finally, the day came when the police would stage raids to apprehend key members of the network behind the threats. As she stood outside the conference hall, where they would announce the successes of the operation, the tension simmered. Emma felt adrenaline course through her body. Not fear, but a sense of empowerment coursing through her. Detective Ramirez stepped up to the podium amid flashing cameras and buzzing whispers. "We are proud to announce that we've made significant progress against the threats of online harassment and stalking. Thanks to the tenacity of community advocates like Emma, we've disrupted a dangerous organization that has exploited and terrorized countless people." The crowd erupted with applause, and Emma felt an overwhelming swell of emotion. Hope, resilience, and unity echoed in her heart, reminding her of the journey that had brought them here. In the end, the culmination of months of advocacy and hard work brought not just personal victories for many, but a systemic shift in how society viewed online harassment. Emma's tireless efforts had not only shed light on the darkness, but had also forged a path to a safer digital landscape for all. As the roar of applause settled down at the conference, Emma stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. "This is not just a victory for those of us in this room today. This is a victory for everyone who has ever felt unseen and unheard. Everyone who has battled their own shadows." The crowd erupted again, understanding deeply the significance of the moment. This was proof that change was possible, that standing together could unearth hope from the depths of fear. Following the announcements, Emma continued to galvanize support for legislative reform, ensuring that the conversation around online safety remained at the forefront of public consciousness. Media coverage of the raids and her subsequent advocacy propelled her into the spotlight, and she became a go-to voice for discussions on cyber safety. In the weeks that followed, Emma unveiled her book, Shadows of the Web, A Journey from Fear to Empowerment. It was a collection of her experiences, well-researched insights about online safety, and stories of fellow survivors who had triumphed against their dark adversities. The book resonated with many, becoming a vital resource for individuals learning how to navigate the complexities of the internet while protecting themselves. As Emma traveled to various book signings and into schools across the country, she shared her message of resilience, urging others to take control of their digital lives. "We may not always be able to predict the shadows, but we can equip ourselves with knowledge and courage to push back against them," she often said. Her insistence on a community-based approach led to partnerships with tech companies that aimed to enhance users' safety features. As a result, several platforms rolled out tools designed to help users protect their information, report harassment quickly, and access support resources instantly. As the months turned into years, Emma watched her grassroots movement gain further momentum, inspiring activists around the globe to speak out and unite against online harassment. Emma often found solace in the connections she had formed, including ongoing collaborations with law enforcement who had embraced her insights on preventive measures and victim support. While she remained vigilant about her own safety, the fear that had once haunted her was now replaced by confidence, clarity, and connection. Emma had transformed her narrative from one of victimization to one of empowerment and activism. Then came a day that would forge a final closure for her past. Months after the successful takedown of the Watchers, Emma received a message that shocked her. It was from a young woman named Sarah, who had been a member of that very group, disillusioned by what she had witnessed and eager to leave the toxic atmosphere behind. "I saw what you're doing, and I can help expose the truth," she wrote. "You deserve to know what really happened." After conversations with Sarah, Emma learned that the core of the group had been internally fractured, with members vying for power in ways that perpetuated fear rather than justice. This insider information proved critical in her quest to understand the broader networks operating in the darkness. With the support of law enforcement, they carefully navigated through Sarah's knowledge, leading to further investigations, which culminated in the exposure and legal consequences for numerous individuals who had thrived on creating fear. Emma felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The final threads of her past were being pulled from the shadows, allowing her to reclaim her narrative fully. Years after that fateful day, Emma stood on the stage once more, this time at a massive digital safety summit attended by thousands. She looked out over the crowd, feeling the undeniable energy of hope and solidarity. Her journey had shifted her from the shadows into the light, illuminating pathways for others to follow. Recognizing that they were all a part of something greater, something profound, she concluded with words that echoed her truth. "Your voice matters. Stand firm in your light. Reclaim your narrative. And together, we redefine safety in our digital world." As the crowd cheered, Emma felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and empowerment. Her heart swelled with pride for every survivor she had met, every voice she had amplified. The darkness may have put her to the test, but in conquering her fears and supporting others, she had transformed it into an unquenchable force for good. The shadows of the web no longer confined her. They had carved out space for resilience, activism, and a community that would continue to shine bright against the darkness. Emma knew her work was far from over, but together they would collectively navigate the night, champions of light in a world that had once felt impossibly dark.